Welcome you the people of all ages, shapes, and colors to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on basketball, alongside my co-host Jay, aka the Knockdown. Jay, how's it going, my guy?
I'm chilling, bro. Crazy games to end off the second round of the NBA playoffs, and now we have a very unprecedented set of conference finals. I don't think anybody predicted this to go this way before the postseason started.
I mean, if you really think about it, 3 out of the 4 teams, like there was no real expectation for them to make it this far to the playoffs. Probably besides Boston. I mean, we knew Boston was probably going to get there, but the rest of these teams, pretty good, pretty surprising. But they had such great series beforehand. We're going to talk about them. We're going to preview the conference finals today, which is going to be awesome, and talk about some postmortems for the teams that got eliminated. And there's going to be some discussions around some of these teams, so it's going to be really, really good. Of course, we're going to end it off with the draft, and of course with the quiz. But before we get to this, we do have to plug our other platforms. Remember to follow our individual accounts at TV on Basketball, at Routine Jumper. Those links will be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws pod, remember to follow our TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content, the recaps, the clips, everything else you want to see. You can find it on the Hit Your Free Throws TikTok or Instagram. In terms of the YouTube, remember to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. And if you're listening on any of the podcast networks, Spotify or Apple, please remember to leave a review, subscribe, all that good stuff. We appreciate all of y'all's support. Jay, are you ready to get into this?
Yeah, bro. It's been one hell of a postseason.
It has been one hell of a postseason. And again, if you want to see our reactions, we're not going to review some of the games today, but if you want to see our instant reactions from the last 2 games from yesterday, which are pretty crazy, check out those on the TikTok pages. But yeah, to start off this episode, we're going to go right into the conference finals, man. There's 2 very interesting matchups here that we're going to preview and give our predictions on. And of course, we're going to start off with the most interesting matchup here, the Dallas Mavericks taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves. How on earth did we get here? I don't know, but we got these 2 teams facing off in the conference finals. I'm going to throw it over to you, Jay. What's the biggest thing you're looking for in this matchup?
I think the biggest thing is obviously like which duo offensively is going to be able to break it the most consistently, Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, or Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. You can make an argument that both duos had struggles throughout their previous series in some respects. Luka Doncic, outside of maybe 2 games in their previous series against the Oklahoma City Thunder, really looked like Luka Doncic throughout that series. You know what I mean? Really playing up to his his all-star and MVP capacity. The same thing could be said for the opposite side for the Minnesota Timberwolves when it came to Karl Anthony Towns. Karl Anthony Towns defensively, he really stepped up throughout this past series. But on the flip side of that, it was, again, another rough series offensively outside of the closeout Game 7. Outside of that, Karl Anthony Towns did not have the greatest offensive run in this past series, and it does make you really wonder. Now, Anthony Edwards, obviously, in Game 7, kind of didn't have as well of a way as he would have liked to close out the series as well, but he was so spectacular through the rest of it that you know what he's capable of coming into the series against the Dallas Mavericks. Same thing can be said for Kyrie Irving, who, again, remains undefeated in closeout games, by the way. That's something that definitely leans into his favor going into a series like this one. So, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. I think the 2 duos are going to have to be able to compete because the name of the game this postseason in the Western Conference is physicality, athleticism, and defense, and both of these teams have it. So I think that equalizer, I'm not going to say it necessarily nullifies each other because you could definitely lean to Minnesota's defense as being A, the most consistent, B, the most versatile, and C, they have the size advantage across the board, something that's going to be talked about a lot. But the thing that kind of does look like the glaring question mark for both sides is how are both of these teams going to get their offense off, considering the way both of these teams have played defense all postseason?
Look, the last 20 games of the season, the Dallas Mavericks were the number 1 defense in all of basketball. But the thing is, they're going up against the number 1 defense throughout the entirety of the season. So even though you have like some offensive juggernauts in Luka, Kyrie, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, this is going to be a grinded out series for both of these teams. So it's an interesting dynamic between these 2. And of course, you can point to the matchup between these 2 like dynamic duos. But who's going to be the third guy to show up for each of these teams? That's what I'm looking for in this series. Jaden McDaniels was an absolute killer in the last series. He was averaging like 16, 17 points a game. Even in that closeout game, he was hitting some big-time shots when Anthony Edwards couldn't get things going. Same thing on the other side with the Dallas Mavericks. when it wasn't Luka, when it wasn't Kyrie, you know who had 2 back-to-back 27-point games? PJ frickin' Washington. So you had these 2 so-called third options. When the other guys aren't getting it going offensively, you've had that kind of missing piece, that diamond in the rough. Who's going to be the one to step it up here? Because when you look at the defensive matchups, who's going to guard Anthony Edwards for most of the series? It's probably going to be Jarek Jones Jr. Then in terms of catch, you're going to either have PJ Washington, Derek Lively, all that. And then on the other side, you have to guard Luka Doncic. More than likely, it's going to be with Jaden McDaniels. But then also with Kyrie, you're going to have to either have Mike Conley on him or Anthony Edwards. That leaves the third option open because you're going to have the best 2 perimeter guys on the other 2 stars. Who's going to be the third guy to step up? We've seen Jaden McDaniels have series especially in the last series, where he's able to hit threes, attack the rim, finish in the paint through contact. PJ Washington, the same thing. So I think when you look at the first 2 guys, they're gonna like nullify each other out because they're just that good of basketball players. It's the third guys that are gonna step up. And the other thing I'm looking at too, man, this is the first time the Dallas Mavericks have to deal with a legitimate physicality in that center position. It's
Definitely.
not like you're gonna have a Chet Holmgren in there. It's not gonna be like you have I think it was Larry Nance in the first round, where you can just like focus on being the help defender. You're gonna have to guard this Timberwolves team 1-on-1 in the paint, especially Karl Anthony Towns, who likes to get down and like into the post and everything. So it's definitely gonna be a challenge for the Dallas Mavericks. But I think like in both ways, you can give me a narrative. I could see a path where either of these teams can win.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, if you look at it from Dallas's perspective, Luka Doncic with the mismatch hunting. There's going to be 2 guys that he's going to want to look for. One for positive, and the other one could be neutral. Depends on how he holds up. The one for positive, leaning in Dallas's favor, they're going to look for Mike Conley, especially with the fact that he had a heroic Game 7. In terms of how he was able to make timely baskets. He is a guy who is coming into this a little dinged up, and he's already a guy that is going to have a size disadvantage. On the flip side, he also really likes to hunt out Rudy Gobert. Now, Rudy Gobert has had a very solid defensive postseason. And I know a lot of people before Game 7 were talking a lot of junk about the fact, really going into Game 6, about Rudy Gobert winning DPOY and then kind of getting busted up in the face by Nikola Jokic in Game 5. Well, he definitely looked more like the DPOY candidate that we know he's been in these final 2 games. And I think a lot of people just look at the box score and say Nikola Jokic dropped 30 plus, and they view that as the DPOY getting completely destroyed. No, Rudy Gobert's defensive acumen goes way beyond being able to thrive in one-on-one defensive matchups. And one of the biggest things that's been helpful throughout this entire postseason is Karl Anthony Towns stepping up defensively and Rudy Gobert being able to act as the back line, or situations where he's in front and somebody like a Naz Reid, who was able to get a couple of key blocks on Jokic, something that doesn't really happen. Exactly doesn't really happen at all in terms of being able to contest the Jokic shots. I mean, Rudy Gobert was having himself one hell of a series. Like I said, the numbers won't tell you, but when I saw Rudy Gobert hit that turnaround jumper in Game 7, I knew it was something else. I knew it was something else because I had to check my temperature to make sure I wasn't having a fever dream. I'm gonna be honest with you, brother, because I had no idea he even had that in his bag, let alone to pull it out. But like they say, the best 2 words in sports might just be Game 7, and what better place to bring it out. So that's going to be something huge for Dallas, is being able to seek out guys like Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert and see how they hold up. You mentioned this with Minnesota beforehand, that next person to step up, knowing that Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns are being able to step offensively. I think the biggest thing in this series, man, is going to come down to their ability to rebound. It's been an unspoken thing throughout this postseason that offensive rebounding is up across the board. The physicality in these series has been told through 2 main things: forcing turnovers against teams that don't typically turn the ball over, forcing teams to really contend on the rebounding, and on both sides of the floor being the other thing. Rebounding is going to be huge in this series. You look at Dallas, they have 3 centers they can deploy, more like 2 that really rebound well when you look at Daniel Gafford, and then you look at what they have with Derek Lively as well, right? So you look at those 2, and then obviously on the opposite end, we know that Minnesota got them a trifecta in the front court with Naz Reid, obviously Karl Anthony Towns, and Rudy Gobert. Offensive glass, that will be Minnesota's calling card. I think for them, getting secondary opportunities, using the fact that they are the bigger team across the board, I think they have to lean into that.
They're gonna have to, because that's how they're able to take down the freaking Denver Nuggets. I mean, the Denver Nuggets in that first half yesterday were completely like, it's out of character for the Timberwolves, who that they were getting out rebounded, out offensive rebounded like yesterday versus the Denver Nuggets, and then they completely flipped the script in the second half. That's how they're able to win this game. So they have to lead against the Dallas Mavericks, because let's be honest, they don't have that interior threat. Maybe minus PJ Washington, but honestly, most of his production comes from the perimeter. So there's not really that like interior threat that you had to go through compared to other series in the playoffs so far. So it's gonna be very interesting. By the way, I like how you mentioned Karl-Anthony Towns earlier. This man had to guard freaking Kevin Durant in the first round, and then had to deal with Nikola Jokic for most of the second round. And to be honest, he did his damn thing. So
yeah,
shout out to him for actually like really stepping on the defensive end. But Jay, I'm gonna throw it back over to you. Your official prediction: Mavs, Timberwolves. Who's going to the finals, and how many games?
Okay, first of all, Minnesota has been so nasty, bro. Like defensively.
No, you know those discussions we've had about like what they do this offseason? I don't get. They've proven us all wrong this postseason so far.
True. And I think that, okay, actually, real quick before I get my prediction, I think that's a great point that we do have to lean into.
Yeah.
I feel like I have brought up on this podcast time and time again the importance, the impact, the influence of what this offseason could look like, depending on the success or lack thereof for the Minnesota Timberwolves throughout this postseason. If this run doesn't give you, as ownership, whoever the hell ends up being the owner by the end of this, if this doesn't give you the motivation to be willing to go into the luxury tax, to hand over, to fork over whatever kind of money needs to be handed out in order to keep this team together, then I don't know what you do. I don't know what else convinces them to do what they need to do. I mean, Tim Connolly at GM, he literally built a new team to defend and defeat his original experiment. And now it is paying off in a way where he just saw that same team win a championship last year and built a team that Nikola Jokic, and I'm going to find the quote because I had it earlier, and I thought this was insane to hear from the guy who just won MVP. Let me pull it up really quick because I think it's just so impactful. Nikola Jokic, after Game 7, was asked about whether or not the Timberwolves and Nuggets are rivals, right? And this being such an interesting conversation when you think about dating back last year, right? It goes deeper than that, right? It goes back to the Jimmy Butler shot against them the first time when the Nuggets just barely missed the postseason years ago. But you come back, and last season, Aaron Gordon says in the offseason, that was actually our toughest matchup. Not
Bruce
the
Brown
Lakers.
said the same thing. Yeah, Bruce Brown said the exact same thing.
Exactly. Not the Lakers, who were the toughest four-game sweep in NBA history. No, Aaron Gordon and Bruce Brown said that this Timberwolves team was their hardest matchup. Mind you, this Timberwolves team was missing Jaden McDaniels, who punched something so hard he had a broken hand and missed the series. Ended up coming up clutch, almost poetic justice that he's the one who steps up big in Game 7, right? And this is what Jokic says about their rivalry. Yes, I think they're built to beat us. They have basically 2 all-stars, 2 all-defensive first-team players, and Mike Conley, who's probably the most underrated player in the NBA. I love the guy. He's so good. This is a team that Jokic himself says might actually be our kryptonite. This is a team that coming after their postseason run last year said, yeah, we made the championship. Yeah, we got to host up to Larry O'Brien. But boy, were we sweating, and boy, were we thinking about this team all offseason in terms of what they could be if they are in a different situation. Minnesota, man, you got to give them a lot of props because they have really put themselves in position to do something special. Shoot, they've already done something special just coming this far. I think with this soliloquy in itself, I've talked myself into picking Minnesota, and I believe they have home court advantage, if I'm not mistaken, because they're the 3rd seed, right?
Yeah.
So, dang. I'm going to take them in 7. It might be going too far, but I think there might be a world where Minnesota handles work earlier than that. But I'm
And
gonna take them in 7. I'm gonna take them
yeah.
in 7.
And I'm actually gonna go with a very similar prediction. I'm gonna go Timberwolves in 6. I think that the way that their defense, it's not just their defense is just stout and their ability to kind of just stay on guys. They overwhelm teams. You could see like Jamal Murray and like Nikola Jokic like sweat buckets at the end of the game. They were up by 6 with 30 seconds left, and the Denver Nuggets like, we give up. We're gonna give this game to you. They could have like kept fouling. They could have kept playing. This team just overwhelms teams with their size, with their athleticism. And then now you got Anthony Edwards like playing at a top 5 level. I think this Timberwolves team, this is their year. This, if any year feels like someone's year, it feels like their year this year. And I think even though they have to face Kyrie and Luka Doncic, who are not gonna disregard in any sense, in any word of the imagination, I just think that their defensive acumen, like you mentioned, with Rudy Gobert playing at his peak, you got Karl-Anthony Towns looking like an all-world defender all of a sudden, and then you got the play of Anthony Edwards with, some sort of depth there with Naz Reid and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I like the Timberwolves' chances, and I got them winning in 6.
I can't blame you. 6 is probably the fair point. I definitely don't think this is a short series, right? I think we both can agree that this is gonna go at least 6 games.
Yes.
It's gonna come down to defense and athleticism. Both of these rosters have shown that off. I think there is one thing that leans in Minnesota's favor that we've learned from this postseason alone that could spell very well for them, though. If you've noticed, throughout the 2 series they've had prior to this one, they have went up against offensive-minded dynamic duos in every series.
Yes.
And you can make an argument that this actually, from a talent perspective, may not even be the most talented dynamic duo offensively out of the 3 they face. Now, of course, that depends on how you view Luka and how you view Kyrie Irving postseason so far.
It's tough because this might be the top 3 dynamic duos in the league that they've like potentially gone up against.
And see, but here's the thing. I think the interesting thing about that is they've also seen them in very similar ways, right? In terms of the way these teams lean on them offensively, right? Basically, we need Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving to self-generate, and we need our other guys to please hit your 3-pointers, right? Yeah. Was that not the same thing that was asked of the Denver Nuggets, who couldn't get anything from Michael Porter Jr. the other night? Yes. Was that not the same thing that the Phoenix Suns dealt with in round 1, where outside of Bradley Beal 1 game out of the entire series, there was no other player for the Suns that could seem to generate any kind of offense, especially from behind the arc, especially after Grayson Allen went down with injury?
You're right. No, you're right.
So I think one of the most important things is going to be the Minnesota Timberwolves shutting off the 3-point line in a way that they kind of operated opposite with the Denver Nuggets. See, the Denver Nuggets, they wanted the Nuggets to get up 3-point shots because that's not usually their bread and butter. If you saw within this series, Jokic had 2 games where he shot way above his average in terms of 3-point attempts per game. He had a game where he shot 9 3-point attempts, and in game 7 he shot 10. That's not a Jokic offensive diet by any means.
Yeah, and he missed like his first 8 too.
Struggled from beyond the arc because it's not a play style that, although he is a stretch big, that is not a thing that he thrives in terms of generating consistent offense. Now the Denver Nuggets were able to get big shots over the course of the series. We mentioned Justin Holiday's name throughout this series, something we never really thought we were going to end up having to, really bring up. Same thing for the Phoenix Suns. They were a team that weren't able to get a ton of 3-point shooting, but that was the kind of offense they were leaning on outside of their 2 main guys. I think if the Minnesota Timberwolves are able to shut off the 3-point line, where a guy like PJ Washington, for example, got to eat his cake the entire series long against the Oklahoma City Thunder, it changes the dynamic. I mean, we saw Derrick Jones Jr. get hot in the second half in game 6 against OKC from beyond the arc. That helped them really get back into that game after being down heavy at halftime. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's going to be a big thing for Minnesota. Offensive rebounding and shutting off the 3-point line makes it where their 2 stars, being the Mavericks' 2 stars, have to be that much more self-reliant. And we've seen when the dynamic duos become dribble, 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 create for yourself and not really be able to do much else against the Minnesota Timberwolves, it ain't gone well.
You're falling right into their hands doing that.
Exactly.
It's going to be a damn good series. And look, if I'm Minnesota, Derrick Jones, let's see if you can continue to shoot over 50% from three. PJ Washington, you want to attempt to the game? Keep doing that. Let's see. I mean, they've been able to do it. Let's see if they're going to be able to continue this on versus the Mavericks. That should be a damn good series. Yeah. But now we got this next series. And Jay, this one won't take as long because, let's be honest, we're really excited for that Western Conference Final Series.
Yeah.
But man, this one, I mean, the Pacers got through. Pacers got through. One of the more unlikely conference finalists, kind of up there with the Atlanta Hawks from a couple years ago, but they made it. The Indiana Pacers, although again versus the injury-riddled Knicks, they advanced, and now they're going up against the Boston Celtics, who, even till now, I still don't know if they've played a real playoff game. And it's the conference finals already. Jay, in this matchup, what are you looking for? And do the Pacers have a remote chance?
TV, so this is the thing. I had to do some digging because I had to figure out a way to even make this segment of the podcast even remotely interesting, considering the circumstances. So this is what I found. During the regular season, and to an extent during the postseason, the Indiana Pacers and the Boston Celtics have been two of the best offenses in the NBA. Especially during the regular season, they were actually two of the best offenses in NBA history. Very notable considering the fact that they both do it in two totally different ways. The Boston Celtics have thrived all year by being one of the best and most efficient three-point shooting teams in the league with their 5-out spacing. The Indiana Pacers have been the best team in terms of creating easy offense through obviously being the highest paced offense in the NBA and also doing the most damage of any team in the league in transition. Now we get to the part where the Indiana Pacers run into their problem, because guess what is the problem with that back half of their strength? The Indiana Pacers are number one in terms of transition offense. The Boston Celtics are the best transition defense in the NBA. That is their biggest Achilles heel right there. Is the thing that they do best is the thing the Celtics take away the most. That gets tricky. My biggest question going into this series, and I heard an interesting comparison. I want your thoughts on it. Something that was brought up throughout the series, at least from me speaking on TikTok, and this goes back to the Milwaukee series as well. Tyrese Halliburton throughout this postseason has been a very interesting fella. He's been a very interesting fella.
He's been in the because he's been like on and off in terms of his play style.
And TV, this is the thing. You just mentioned it, but here's the way it goes. When he's on, he's really on.
Game 7, bro. Game 7, he was that guy last game.
And he was talking his mess. He was getting himself going. He was able to really get the whole offense up and rolling. The team was playing high energy, high tempo, and when they do that, they blow folks out. We've seen it all postseason long, right? But we've also seen these games where he comes out, 7 shot attempts, 9 shot attempts, 10 shot attempts. And TV, the association that I saw that I heard that was related to a guy like Tyrese, I thought this was a really interesting comp, was the 7-second or less version of Steve Nash with the Phoenix Suns. And the game plan for opposing defenses was, I'm cool with Nash going out. I think it was a game against the Lakers or something like that during that time frame. I'm cool with Nash scoring 42 in the game. But if he only has 6 or 7 assists and is not able to distribute as a guy who's typically a pass-first point guard, I think we can live with the circumstances because we know that the energy of the team rides around that guy getting the others involved, not him taking the stride as the number one option. I think that's an interesting thing that the Boston Celtics might want to be able to lean into, because if they force Tyrese to be an offensive hub as opposed to being a dude who's creating for others and playing the play style that obviously gets him going the most, which is obviously getting the others involved, it's one of those things where I wonder how the Pacers are able to thrive. Because I think that when you mentioned this back in the Milwaukee series, and it was such a great point. I've actually been leaning into it heavily throughout the TikToks and stuff. When the Indiana Pacers get 32 or more assists in a game, they just seem unstoppable. And we know a lot of that starts with Tyrese Halliburton. So what if you take that part away and you force him to have to be a scorer? What does the rest of the team look like? I think that's something Boston has to look at.
Yes, 100%. It's really minimizing like firstly, Indiana gets across half court so quickly. If you watch these games, they get across half court in like 4 seconds. So they really want to get into their offense super, super quick. If you can stay at home, make sure you guys like get back on defense right away, and make Tyrese Halliburton be the ones to dribble late into the shot clock and get a shot off, then you'll be good. But the thing is, we've seen it with the New York Knicks. It's just that even on a missed shot, like the Pacers mentality is go, 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 go through, and that's when things get things start getting rattled. Like that's how they get other teams rattled. Tyrese Halliburton, my issue with him is, yes, sometimes he doesn't shoot enough shots. I need him to get his shots off early in the game. This is what I need Tyrese to do. Just to get his shots early in the game, so that opens up for the rest of them. If he becomes Steve Nash, pass right away, don't look for my shot, then the Pacers are not using their biggest strength, which is Tyrese Halliburton's his 3-point shot and his ability to make people react. Because when the thing is he shoots from the most unconventional angles, but he can still hit it in when he's hot. So it's all about him getting his stuff early, and that opens up the rest for the other teams. But again, the Boston Celtics, one of the best defenses in the league, they have guys who are built to deal with the Pacers 5-out offense. They have what? Even if Kristaps Porzingis is not playing, you have freaking Al Horford on the floor. You have Tatum, Brown, and then you have some of the 2 best defensive guards in the league. The Pacers are not facing an injury riddled Bucks team. You're not facing an injury riddled Knicks team. You're facing the healthiest team in the league, the team who's got probably the most rest out of anyone in the playoffs so far. And you have to deal with the fact that you're not a great defense, even though they're middle of the pack with Siakam's on the court. But you have to deal with one of the best offenses led by Tatum and Brown. So I want to say that if we can get IST Tyrese, that this series can go long. But this Boston Celtics team has given me no reason to expect it to go the other way. I still think the Boston is the clear favorite here.
I mean, I agree with you. And I think one of the things that scares me about Indiana, too, is as lethal as they are offensively, that defense is still not good. It's still not good. Jalen Brunson was getting his way against Andrew Nembhard all series long. And TV, this was something that stood out to me last night that I thought was low-key scary when you think about what they could be facing up ahead with the Boston Celtics. In Game 7 against the New York Knicks, they let Dante DiVincenzo shoot from beyond the arc 15 times.
He had 9 of them, right? That.
He hit 9 of his 15 3-point attempts. Let me ask you this. Okay, maybe Drew Holiday is the easy answer, potentially, right? Based off the way he's played this postseason and really all year. But when you look across the board, how many people do you think you can get 15 3-point shot attempts off for the Celtics and still feel comfortable?
Oh, no. No one. Even going off their bench, you don't want Payne Pritchard. You know he can get going. Even someone like Sam Hauser, you know he can get going from 3. So the Boston Celtics is the team you don't want to shoot to get as many 3s up, especially if they're hitting them. We know that they're literally the most unstoppable team in the league when they're hitting 3s.
That's the thing. They're already one of the teams they're already one of those teams in the league where they're top 3, top 5 in terms of 3-point volume without you giving it to them.
Yeah.
The Indiana Pacers almost kind of specialize in giving the 3. And then with that now you can make an argument that maybe against a Milwaukee Bucks team and a New York Knicks team, maybe the strategy is to give them the 3 because they know that these are 2 teams that don't necessarily shoot the 3 ball at a high clip. Maybe that's the way you view it versus the Boston Celtics team where you force them to put the ball on the floor. But then you have one of the best slashers in the NBA in Jaylen Brown. You have one of the best internal ball handlers in Derek White. You have a guy who I would still say is one of the top 5 ISO offensive creators in the NBA, regardless of how you feel about him, in Jason Tatum. So then if the pick your poison is, well, we want you guys to put the ball on the deck,
They got players. They got players to do that. Yeah.
Exactly. So unfortunately, this is a game of pick your poison for the Indiana Pacers. I think the easiest way to go about this is the same way I've been going all postseason long. I'm taking Boston in 5, and it's because I don't trust them to sweep.
Literally, though. I mean, for me, like, okay, you got Boston at 5. That is fair. For me to keep this series and for Philly to and for Indiana to keep this long is one, Tyrese Halliburton has to again have the same offensive aggression, not just by passing the ball but shooting as well. But their bench has been so key in this series, especially with TJ McConnell and Obi Toppin. If those guys could give you like 12, 13 points a game, TJ gives you like what 10 and 8, 10 and 8 assists, and he's able to be that pesky defender on the other end. Then you can keep these games close, and maybe you guys got a chance there. But against this Boston Celtics team, when you have all those 5, we talked about the best starting, if Porzingis is healthy, the best starting 6 in basketball, then it's just gonna be tough, like no matter what. I am rooting for the Pacers to do it. I'm just, even though I'm wearing a Boston Celtics shirt, I am not a Boston fan whatsoever. Like it's like one of those things where I feel like even though Boston is a really good team, they just feel really unlikable. I don't know really what it is, but they just kind of feel like that. But for them to extend a series, a lot of things like they have to really rely on that offense to like really produce. I mean, you're not going to shoot 67% from the field every game like they did in Game 7 versus the Knicks. So I got Boston. I want to say it goes longer, but I can't. I'm going to say Boston in 5. And let's be honest, they're going to lose Game 2 like they have for the rest of the
playoffs. That's hilarious.
Yeah, they always like to give us a little bit of hope in the early in the series, and then afterwards, Boston just decides to hit 16 threes a game and call it a day. But yeah, Boston, you have a clear path to the finals. Let's see if they don't F it up. Let's see if they don't F it up. They can't play with their food. I will say that they can't play with their food here, because people are already like saying, "Oh, this is the easiest path to the finals." You need to step on their neck, and you have to show the rest of the league why you're the number 1 team record-wise and why you've been the best team all season long.
I agree. I mean, Boston's in a very advantageous situation right now, brother. I mean, that's the easiest way to put it.
I mean, I don't know if you listened to the Bob Myers episode of I think Old Man in the 3. He said that like one of the hardest expectations to face is when you're expected to win every single year. And with Boston this year specifically, when you're expected to like dominate the entire East, it's gonna be interesting to see how they react. But they definitely have the talent to do so.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's move on to the next section, and it's time to say our postmortems for our fallen for the last 3 fallen NBA teams. And we're gonna start off with the Denver Nuggets, the former defending champions, have gone fishing. Jay, how has this season been for Denver?
I mean, they got bit in the tail by stuff they couldn't control. Jeff Green, the bidding war for him that wasn't what was in terms of him ending up in Houston, was its own thing. And in terms of Bruce Brown, I mean, you couldn't afford to pay him. Indiana threw him a bag, and it was a number he could not refuse, and it was a number that he earned. And although he did not finish on Indiana, although he's probably not going to go into next season on your Toronto Raptors with all the buzz around him this offseason.
I will say, Denver, if you want to trade for him back, we are listening to offers.
But basically, when you really look at it, I mean, they got killed in the way that they killed people last year, and that's they had depth, and they had. I mean, there's 2 ways to look at it. I mean, they had depth. They had one of the best overall starting 5s in the NBA. I mean, shoot, they had one of the best starting 5s in the NBA all year this year. They just didn't play like it throughout the entirety of this postseason. They had spurts where Michael Porter Jr. was one of the better players on the floor. Aaron Gordon was one of the better players on the floor. Like, they had opportunities where they did look like one of the best teams in the NBA as a 5-man unit, but their bench was a question all year. This was something that we were worried about going into the postseason for the Denver Nuggets from the minute the season started. And losing Bruce Brown in particular, he took with him a particular level of like up and down athleticism to kind of help play with a different kind of pace that this team got stuck in half court a lot against Minnesota. And against a physical-based defense that the Minnesota Timberwolves were running, having to be stuck in half-court sets, it takes away easy opportunities for yourself. And that's something the Denver Nuggets live off of, is easy buckets and making hard buckets look easy. Those are their two main ways over the last 2 years that they've been a thorn in the side of other teams in the NBA. And this year, Bruce Brown kind of acted as a missing link that many people that are, the casual NBA fan won't associate with the downfall of the Denver Nuggets. But for those who paid attention to the road that got the Nuggets to the finals and eventually winning the championship last year, his contributions both on offense as a guy who could jumpstart transition and on defense as a dude who had crazy switchability, they really missed that. Peyton Watson didn't play in this series, right? They had a handful of, Christian Brown, he was okay, but he was not very effective throughout this series. Michael Porter Jr. as one of the third or fourth options had 4 straight games where he didn't crack double figures offensively. And he's basically been relegated to a shooter. He's not a guy who moved the ball much. He's improved defensively, but he's not some top tier defender. He is a shooter at heart. He is a guy where when the ball touches his hand, it's leaving his hand and it's headed towards the basket. And if you're going to go throughout the series where you have 4 out of 7 games where you can't crack double figures, the shooter isn't shooting. And that really kills your offense. So I think this was a really strong year for them. They just ran into a team that was built to see them. And that's what happens.
Yeah. The biggest thing I'm going to look at this team is their bench, and they said before the season that they are willing to take the risk with seeing the development of Christian Brown, Payne Watson, and like trying to live with the bench that they have. And where did that get them? Payne Watson didn't play a lick of playing time in the final 2 games of the series. He was unplayable. Reggie Jackson had 5 minutes in this game and had 2 turnovers. The bench was like one of the biggest things with the Denver Nuggets last year when it came to energy, hitting shots. I mean, Jeff Green was massive for them in that finals run, but they really relied on that Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic duo, and although they were fantastic, the other guys just like couldn't get it going. I mean, like Aaron Gordon this year, one of the biggest, even though he had a good season again, one of the biggest things like I was looking at him for was like, he took a big regression from 3. He used to be a threat even last year, but being a 28% 3-point shooter meant that every time that they gave him the ball out on the perimeter, the Minnesota Timberwolves are just going to leave him wide open and dare him to shoot those. So making sure that he's not even a threat and then not having the bench to kind of back that up. I mean, they didn't have anyone to play center besides Jokic. They had to play Aaron Gordon at center at times. Like, I would have even tried to give him like 5 minutes to DeAndre Jordan, but Michael Malone clearly didn't trust that. So this team, the way I see it is they have the starting lineup that they need to go forward. That's obvious. They need to improve this bench. They need to add some veteran presence on this bench. Christian Brown's going to be a good bench player for a while. Maybe Payne Watson takes the next step, but they need some veteran leadership on that bench. They had that leader in Bruce Brown in the championship season. They had Jeff Green. They need to bring that sort of veteran leadership back into that bench unit. And then after that, I think we can see them back in this position next year where, they're still going to be competing for a title.
Yeah, anybody who's like calling for the heads of the Denver Nuggets, is the dynasty over, these different things? Like, no, we've seen, not to compare them directly to this team, but like we saw a team like the San Antonio Spurs not necessarily win it every year, but be in contention for a long time. The Denver Nuggets with their core, led by a Jamal Murray, led by a Nikola Jokic, have the chance to be really good for a long time. Now, obviously, with the tax situation coming up in the second apron, they're going to have to make some real decisions on a couple of guys. And I think one of the dudes who is going to get a real look at this summer is Michael Porter Jr. I don't know if anybody's looked at his spot track lately in terms of what he's getting paid, but it's been forgotten that they gave him essentially a rookie max extension when his contract came up about a year or 2 ago. And obviously that paid off last season when he played like balls to the walls in their title run. But in a year like this one where they saw the flaws of not having real depth, and you have to look across their roster and figure out what is the easiest and not just the easiest, but also the most likely way that they can recreate that depth, they're going to have to find somebody on that roster that to be able to move to expand out their depth in some kind of way. Michael Porter Jr. with that hefty tax bracket he's got coming off of the series he just had as a guy who has only kind of been a shooter for the Nuggets, he is a guy they're going to have to look at. He is, in a weird way, he is the Nuggets version of Tobias Harris to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And you can make an argument, especially within Nuggets brass, that maybe he's not viewed as negatively as a Tobias Harris is amongst, Philly fans. But Michael Porter Jr., for what he is being paid to do for Denver, it doesn't look like the money lines up. Now, if he's able to go to a different team and get more on-ball creation, get more opportunities to post up, get more opportunities as an on-ball threat, maybe as a second offensive option or something like that, you can maybe justify the money he's being paid for a different team. But for this Denver Nuggets team, where really they just need Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, wing defenders, and shooting, Michael Porter Jr. is a very overpaid player for what they need. And so I think they're going to use him as a way to spread the wealth a little bit and get back some of that depth they so desperately need.
It's going to be definitely interesting to see. I think this team comes back the same next year, but the year after that, it's going to be interesting to see how this team is going to be reconstructed, because you know who your two guys are and how you want to build a team around them. Michael Porter Jr. might be the casualty that might end up being traded away from the team eventually. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Denver Nuggets do, but let's be honest, there still should be near the top of your list to be title contenders next year, though, especially with how great Nikola Jokic is. So great season for them. It's just that, like you said, they ran into their kryptonite, which is the Timberwolves, and they played them very well. Can't wait to see them back next year, though. Next team, though, that we're going to be talking about, our postmortem for the New York Knicks. And man, to see that they had 6 or 7 guys injured by the end of this series was a tough watch. Jalen Brunson breaking his hand in the final game was tough. Jay, how was the season for the Knicks?
I think the Knicks have to be really happy about what they did this year. I mean, they literally had to go until the wheels fell off. I mean, think about all the guys. Think about all the guys they lost. Jalen Brunson goes down with a hand injury in the third quarter in Game 7. Josh Hart is literally wearing some kind of restrictive tape on his abdomen in the game and quite literally has to foul out to end up out of the game, because I don't think there's any other way humanly possible to take Josh Hart out of a basketball game at this rate.
Exactly.
Right? And then you look at the other guys who they were already missing. Bogey was gone. Julius Randle, Mitch Robb. I mean,
OG
obviously
played 4 minutes and then had to be taken out.
I mean, played 4 minutes and quite literally just almost looked like he couldn't run the scale of the court, right? It was one of those things where this New York team quite literally, like we said before, ran this thing until the car crashed. And that is one of the elements that comes with an 82-game season and a postseason where you have to win 16 times and you have to do it as quickly and as efficiently as possible, because the war of attrition is a part of what makes this sport what it is. And the Knicks, they hit the injury bug at arguably the worst time possible, but that comes with not only just the playoffs, but it comes with the play style. Now, don't get me wrong. Jalen Brunson breaking his hand, Bojan Bogdanovic with his injury, these are all things that you could definitely chalk up to freak accidents to a certain degree, of course, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, and nobody's blaming Tibbs, because I think that's just a very corny Twitter take to say the way that Tibbs ran these guys throughout the season is what ultimately became their downfall. I don't believe that that's really a viable point. I think that's just a Twitter hot take to get the clicks going. But I do think at the end of the day, their play style is almost metaphorically a representation of a team that's going to go, and eventually run out of gas. You know what I mean? And that's what this team essentially ran into. Now, did it happen in a freakish way? Of course it did. This was definitely as unprecedented as it gets. But you can also make a real good, comp to the fact that there's a lot of different things beyond their injuries that they were able to make make wine out of water throughout this entire postseason as well. So I think you have to really big ups to the New York Knicks this year, and they go into the summer with cap space. They go into the summer with real options. They have a handful of draft picks, not even just their own, that they can use as trade capital. And they look like a really dangerous team, and they're going to be brought up a lot with a lot of these potential disgruntled superstars and big names that could potentially be on the move this summer. So I mean, it's a bittersweet end for the New York Knicks with the way that they had to go out. But all things considered, I mean, this is the best season they've had in 20 years, and I think that you know the mellow Knicks in 2013, 2014 is obviously one of the most synonymous Knicks in the 2000s.
Yeah.
This team is easily the next best up, if not maybe more.
They're better. This team is better.
They might be better. They might have more moments in this postseason alone. And I mean, that means that they're going to go down in Knicks lore. And that's something that, and when you talk about your NBA career, that's not something to be taken lightly.
Yeah, no, this team literally, like you mentioned, fought to the very end till literally they had no one left. They literally played like Alec Burks had probably one of the better games of Game 7, and this guy didn't play for like a month and a half in this at the end of the year. So if you look at the Knicks roster right now, I think that you're confident if everyone comes back healthy that they have like 11 players that could truly be part of the rotation. And not to mention the fact, like you mentioned, they still have some picks. They got some assets. They can improve that team like pretty like drastically. So you never know what the Knicks are gonna look like next season. But I will say, you got Jalen Brunson, and he looked like a top 10 player in the league this postseason. And you have all of these guys filling up their roles really well. Donte DiVincenzo turned into one of the best 3-point shooters in basketball. And this is like all of this, what happened in this playoff so far, are not without even Julius Randle. What's his future looking like in New York? I mean, he played to an All-NBA caliber level for a couple of seasons there. Even after that slow start this year, he played at a near All-NBA level as well. So they have a lot of talent, and they have I think the right coach to motivate the guys that he has on the court.
Mm-hmm.
It's just being able to, like you said, like how far can they really go with this play style? I think that, again, a lot of freak accidents this year. If I'm the Knicks, I'm running mostly back this year. If you want to make some changes to like the surrounding pieces, sure. But I think that this is the type of team that you want to have going forward. This is a team that Knicks can get behind. And this team, like you could just tell from like on a game-to-game basis, these guys are playing for each other. And I think that you want to have this sort of energy coming into next season.
I definitely agree. I mean, the Knicks are definitely in a good position. They look good. Now, of course, there's a handful of different names that are associated with the Knicks, right? Obviously, one of the biggest things is maybe they can be able to do some kind of sign and trade situation that involves Paul George. They are a team that's already kind of got ringing bells for Donovan Mitchell. I think another name that should be kind of brought up in association with them, with the fact that Isaiah Hartenstein probably is going to get a bag this summer from somebody, because the Knicks can only afford to pay him but so much based off like salary cap rules and stuff with his bird rights and different stuff like that or whatever. I think they should look at Jared Allen. I think, hilariously enough, that's another guy that I think would be super interesting for their front court. They've got options. Obviously, Karl Anthony Towns was a dude that was brought up for like eons. Joel Embiid brought up for like eons. I don't know if those guys are necessarily on the table the way they were before. But they've got a lot of intrigue moving forward. And I think the biggest question for the New York Knicks actually has nothing to do with their roster in terms of the guys we saw during the postseason. I think the biggest question is, how much do you value Julius Randle after what we've seen? Now, you could overreact and say that you feel like you may not need him because you saw how they were able to thrive without his presence. You could also look at him and say, well, he still is a secondary shot creator. And that was probably the biggest thing we were missing throughout this postseason run. What could we do if he were healthy, and run it back with him obviously back on the floor? That's going to be, I think, to me, their biggest question in the offseason. How much do you value Julius Randle overall? Because if he's a trade chip, he's one interesting trade chip. But if he's a guy you want to keep on your roster, you also have to look at that too and ask yourself, how valuable do you think he could be after what we just saw in the postseason without him?
Yeah, 100%. But what we do know for this Knicks, man, is they're in a good spot, and they have like a good problem to have, where it's like, okay, maybe we have too many good guys right now. Maybe we can like actually flip these guys into better pieces. We have draft assets. We have a guy that we could potentially trade for even like another star. I think they're in a really good position. But honestly, there's not many better teams in their position right now, except for the section we're talking about, the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah.
People thought they were going to be a play-in team this year, became the number one team in the West, took Luka and Kyrie to 6 games, a very competitive 6 games, by the way, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was the runner-up in MVP. Phenomenal season for the Thunder. Jay, your thoughts?
Tough way to go out. Young team that just down the stretch in Game 7, just little small mistakes hurt them, and that makes sense for a young squad. At the end of the day, this was a team that down the stretch, this was a team that was up 20 going into halftime, or what was it, 17 at least, right? Going into halftime.
Yeah.
And it just came down to rough mistakes down the stretch. Obviously, the biggest mistake coming from the biggest player in the series being Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in that closeout on PJ Washington that gave the 3 awarded free throws to lose the game. And you have to credit Shai Gilgeous-Alexander because actually if you play that actual sequence back another 10 seconds prior to that, he had just contested Luka Doncic, who then was able to regain the ball and swing it to PJ Washington to even give him the chance. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander actually got a clean contest. It was the contact after the contest that even drew the foul in the first place. It's the little on the margin things that are the difference in winning games, and winning games is how you win series. And that means for every little mistake you make, it can be costly in losing yourself a series. And in Game 7, when it go home, they struggled down the stretch. TV, my biggest worry for the Oklahoma City Thunder is consolidation and understanding what their next steps are. Sam Presti could easily kick his feet back and say, we overachieved, but we're going to continue the slow grind. He easily could do that because that's been the philosophy he's been leaning with prior to this year. The flip side of that is this is a really good team with a lot of cap space and a lot of guys they do have to make decisions on because Mark Daigneault, to his credit, was able to kind of dig into his bench during this postseason. But to a certain extent, that leaning on his depth came to a fault because there were certain guys in this series who just could not play up to par. Aaron Wiggins was a really good three-point shooter throughout the year. Wasn't able to shoot the 3-ball well throughout this postseason. Lucas Dort was a good 39% three-point shooter during the regular season. Could not hit the 3-ball during this series too much. Josh Giddey
got played off the court.
Completely played off the floor, and we end up having to put Isaiah Joe in the starting lineup, who we know could space the floor, but we knew also came with defensive problems that easily got exposed by the Dallas Mavericks throughout the series once they went to that. Consolidation and leaning into the timeline they have going right now, it's going to be a really interesting conversation for them because we've seen other teams across the board have this opportunity and not take it. The Memphis Grizzlies, for example, were a team that we kept saying with draft picks and young prospects on the roster could consolidate them and go after. We were talking about your team a year ago with OG Anunoby, right? And those guys, they didn't take the opportunity, and a year later, they went from being one of the best teams in the Western Conference to running into a spiral of problems on and off the floor, and they became a forgotten NBA team in the Western Conference in one season. Now, a lot of us see them as being able to bounce back next year, but it goes to show you how little these windows can stay open if you don't take opportunities, regardless of how young your squad is. So that'll be the big question for Oklahoma City with guys like Lucas Dort, due to be able to get paid. Josh Giddey, who might not be a guy who they might be able to hold on to long term with what they have moving forward. It's a lot to wonder about for the Oklahoma City Thunder because, like I said, they could kick their feet up and say, second full year of Chet Holmgren, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander building off an MVP year, Jalen Williams gets another step in the right direction. They move off from Josh Giddey and maybe be able to get, a better talent with, pairing him with some draft capital to maybe, take an upward swing towards a Lauri Markkanen or, taking their cap space and going after a Paul George. These are all things that are on the table for them. It just depends on how they decide to use that space.
I don't think they're going to waste this opportunity, and here's why. They had this exact scenario a decade ago when they had James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Russell Westbrook. and they didn't take advantage of that trio. They skimped out. They're not going to waste an opportunity this time. I think what Sam Presti did this season, because people were saying, the Thunder are just missing that big. They need another big wing. Um, like this, there's so like there's like maybe they're one or two pieces away, but Sam Presti didn't overreact because you know why? He wanted to see what this core could do in the playoffs. And to be honest, they went pretty damn far. They were like maybe a few plays here and there. They could have been in the conference finals. Now, what I think is going to happen this offseason is like, okay, we saw what this team can do in the conference finals. Now let's see what places we need to fill out. Maybe there's still in need of a big wing. I think that having Jalen Williams as a 6'4" power, a 6'4", 6'5" power forward, maybe not the best idea, but I think that they can make a move there. They maybe need another center next to Chet Holmgren. But I think that the Thunder now, with their influx of picks, with all of this assets that they have, they're going to make a move. Whether it's something small or they're going to make some sort of like OG and Anunoby type move for that sort of player to add into their roster. They need to take advantage of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Yeah. He is a runner-up in MVP this year, and his like play style can last you for a decade if you know how to use it right. You hear people saying this is the worst Thunder team that we might see over the next 10 years if they play their cards right.
Yeah,
I think that now that they know that they have a perennial MVP candidate in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander ahead of them, and now you see the emergence of Jalen Williams, and now of course Chet Holmgren has been absolutely fantastic in his first year. They're gonna want to take advantage of this and build the pieces around them so that they can maximize this window that they have. It's a long window, but you have to make the right moves. And I think Sam Presti, after the Thunder made that mistake 10 years ago, they're not gonna make it again.
I'll give you 4 names if they decide to take the swing that you're saying they take that would actually lift them to the next level that we're talking about. And I'll give short, brief reasons as to why, but I won't go too in depth on them, but I'll give you the 4. The first one is Paul George returning to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Seamless fit in all the ways that we know as an off-ball wing, doesn't need too much responsibility, obviously gives them a different opportunity to maybe bump Chet down to the 5, have Jay Will still be able to play the 3, maybe play down at the 4, still put Paul George on the floor at either the 2 or the 3. Would be really interesting if he could be your 2 guard and you still go after another center in free agency or off the scrap heap that way, or just grab a Zach Edey, for example, in the off season during the draft, and then you put Paul George at the 2 next to a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jay Will at the 3, Chet at the 4, and a Zach Edey, for example, at the 5. The other 3 guys that come up after that, Lauri Markkanen, for all the reasons me and you have said before. They have the draft capital. I mean, they have the draft capital. We know what Kevin McHale is like when it comes to being able to go after future assets. And if there's any team to trade with for future assets, it's the Oklahoma City Thunder, because although the picks values might not be crazy, the volume is what really is a game changer for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And of course, they've got a couple of young prospects as well that could sweeten up the deal. The next 2, both bigs, and for reasons that I think are obvious. The first one is the aforementioned Jarrett Allen. Might be a little disgruntled after some of the stories we heard after Cleveland went out this past weekend, considering the fact that there was a lot of stuff related to people questioning Jarrett Allen's heart, people questioning his willingness to come back from injury, his willingness to take apparently pain injections. His fit next to Evan Mobley has been a question for the last season and a half. A lot of questions around Jarrett Allen that could make him a very valuable target over the offseason. And he definitely changes Oklahoma City's dynamic in the front court for a very particular reason. I'm going to explain that again, explain that in a second when I add the second guy who I think also adds to it. Ironically, another return to Oklahoma City. I think you might want to call you might want to call up the Houston Rockets again and see if you can grab that man, Steven Adams. If Steven Adams can come back and be healthy for them, we automatically know he's going to make them board machines. Because if there's one thing that Steven Adams does well is rebound the ball. Now, you pair that, obviously, that he brings a level of physicality at the front court spot that they don't necessarily have right now. He could be a huge injection at the center position for what might not cost them too much. And knowing that the Houston Rockets saw so much from Alperen Sengun this season, sure, lean into Steven Adams being a backup center, or they may not. Who knows? It'll really depend. But I think the biggest thing when you look at Jared Allen and Steven Adams is rim protection next to Chet Holmgren, which Chet is already one of the better rim defenders in the NBA. So Jesus Christ, what does that add if you have two shot blockers, especially Jared Allen in that regard? But the other thing that's been killing them all year long, is rebounding the basketball. And these two guys at the center spot are two of the better rebounders in the league.
Honestly, man, like if you can like get Steven Adams, it's the same idea with like Memphis and how you have Jaren Jackson Jr. as that like kind of that guy like roaming the paint, like trying to like get like hunt for those blocks, and then you have Steven Adams who's that one-on-one big scene screen setter. That idea for the Thunder is maybe something they want to lead into. Either him or even someone like Andre Drummond. Like those two guys that some of the hardest screens in basketball. If you can get like any of those two, and then maybe draft like you mentioned Zach Edey or someone else like that, and have them like underneath his wing, it'll be great. Jared Allen is great too because you get another All-Star caliber player. Paul George is a great option as well. All those options are great. I just think that the Thunder, they can't waste this offseason, and they need to make sure that they move forward and not stay still, because we've seen with so many teams where teams just stay still while they let the other guys go ahead. They need to move with the times, and they have to make the right moves in order to keep up with the rest of the West. Because I mean, the East has it's clearly the like not the best conference in between the two, but the West is always getting better, and you have to catch up with that.
I mean, you said it best to close it out with that one. I mean, the West is not slowing down for anybody. Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs have 2 lottery picks in the top 10 this year, right? With Wemby having what might be his worst season by the time his career is over, for all we know, right? Yeah. Obviously, the Memphis Grizzlies are coming back. The Golden State Warriors are going to try to find a way to retool to continue what they have going. The Houston Rockets showed us glimpses this year that they can be scary. And if they get the version of Jalen Green that we saw toward the back end of the year for a longer term, we know how dangerous they could actually be. There's a lot to look forward to in the Western Conference, but that means teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder, who showed us something this year, can't get complacent for exactly what you mean. The league will catch up, and it don't take much to do it. We just saw the Denver Nuggets, the defending champions, find a team that caught up quick, and it took one season to prove that the Denver Nuggets might not be as unstoppable as we once thought they were coming off that chip.
100%. I mean, the West, I was looking at all the teams. They go like 13 deep. But besides like the Trailblazers and maybe the Jazz, there's a chance that these like all the other teams can like make the next step. And the Thunder, they need to like make sure they're on top of things. So yeah, those are our postmortem for all the teams. Let us know down below what you guys think, and what do you think? Like what if you think they're like any of their thoughts for their season as well. Jay, we're going to move on to the next topic, and it's time for us to do our weekly NBA draft. And this week, we are going to the 2015 draft. Not as great as the 2014 draft that we just did, but I think there's still some nice little pieces here.
I totally agree. I mean, I think that's the best way to look at it. Is there's a lot of top-end talent, but I think once we start getting to the depth picks, we're going to start making some deep cuts, and it's just going to come down to, like, who do you like?
100%. And you know how these drafts go. Jay gets the first pick. I get the next two, and we run things serpentine style. So, Jay, first overall pick in this draft, who are you going with?
Yeah, man, I'm gonna go. Give me D-Book, man. Give me D-Book.
Yeah, that felt like the obvious option. I was looking at this draft. It's pretty big heavy. I will say it's pretty big heavy. So getting like the best player in the draft, and he's a guard, is pretty massive here. So getting Devin Booker is a great choice. For myself, I gotta take the two best big men off the board, man. Karl-Anthony Towns and Kristaps Porzingis. Let me get those two.
Dang, what the heck? Took both the bigs.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good play. That's a really good way to play that, though. I'm not gonna lie. Oh man, that's brutal though, because I don't know if I got jack to deal with that. I don't think there's jack to deal with that in here.
I mean, there's still some decent. I feel there's some guys that can maybe like match up a little bit.
All right, so let's go Miles Turner.
Yeah, okay,
as one of them. Make sure I'm putting my actual picks together real quick. Miles Turner is one of them, and then the other one. Bob, give me D. Let me get D'Lo at the point guard.
Yeah, I had a feeling that was going to go off the board. So you took Miles Turner and D'Angelo Russell. That is a fair combo. For myself now, see, this is where you took most of the good guards. This is where I'm going to have to start reaching pretty soon. So for my next two picks, give me a nice defensive 3-and-D wing. Let me go with Kelly Oubre as one of my pickups. And then I'm going to go with one of your boys, Jay. I know he kind of slipped off a little bit because he was over there in Washington, but he's still one of the TV and J All Stars. Let me go Tyus Jones at the point guard position.
Can't go wrong with Tyus Jones, and you got two bigs that all Tyus has to do is throw the rock to him. Man, yeah. That's solid. I can't be mad at it. Who do we got here? Miles Turner is a stretch big. I need me a real 3 somewhere, and I don't know where he is, which might spell trouble for me. Because you took Kelly Oubre is a really good pickup. Let me get Bobby Portis at the 4.
Like that. I like that pick.
That 3 is tricky though. That's the part. I might just have to go a little smaller there. That might be.
Yeah, there's one guy I would probably go with for you in this position, but again, there's a pretty deep draft, I will say. It's a pretty, you can go into the second round for these ones.
Yeah. There's definitely, like you said, there's definitely some options to choose from. I'm just wondering if I really... Because there's one that I like, but it means we're going to be really small. And then there's another one that's kind of like I'm picking the peak version of him, which the peak version of him was nice, but it was only good for a year.
But hey, if we're getting peak version of it, fair enough if you get the peak version of him.
Well, I'm gonna pick the guy that in 2015 draft was one of the dudes I was like the highest on and was super hyped when I saw him drop to 10, even though I'm not a Miami Heat fan. Let me get Justice Winslow at the 3.
Got you, Justice Winslow at the 3. Okay. Then that fills up your team, right? That's your final pick?
Yeah, that's my last one.
Perfect, absolutely perfect, because I just needed one guy there to fill out my roster. One of my favorite Toronto Raptors over the last decade, that he's coming back to my side. Give me Norman Powell to round out the 2 position.
That was the guy.
I honestly thought you might go with Josh Richardson. I thought that maybe his peak with Miami back in the day was pretty solid as well. But yeah, no, Justice Winslow's a good one. He was also one of my guys back in this draft. I was super high on him. So yeah.
I think the biggest thing was just size. I mean, I'm already giving up a lot in terms of Karl Anthony Towns and Kristaps Porzingis.
Fair.
So I think it was one of those things where I just was afraid about size because I'm already kind of outmatched there. But I think Josh Richardson at his peak, especially as a 3-point shooter and a 2-way wing with Miami, I mean, he had himself a year or two that definitely made him memorable. But Justice Winslow had 27, 7, and 8, and I thought he was the second coming of something the following year. And
I thought he was going to be that guy, bro.
It didn't pan out too well. But hey, I mean, he's still one of those what ifs that could have been really interesting for Miami.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that's the end of this draft. Jay, throwing it over to you. Who is the team that you got from the 2015 draft?
So my 2015 NBA draft selection starting 5 is going to be D'Angelo Russell at the 1, Devin Booker at the 2, Justice Winslow at the 3, Bobby Portis at the 4, and Miles Turner at the 5.
Solid lineup. I like that backcourt. I do definitely like that backcourt of D'Lo and D-Book. Over on my side, I got Tyus Jones running the 1, Norman Powell at the 2, Kelly Oubre Jr. at the 3. Then we got the front court of Porzingis and Karl Anthony Towns running my 4 and 5.
I just think that front court's too nasty, bro. I like my back court, but that front court is just that front court might just be too nasty. I don't know.
Especially with Cat now with the defensive acumen that he's getting. Ooh, this is gonna be nice. But yeah, let us know down below what you guys think. 2015 draft team. Who do you got? My team or Jay's team? All right, we're going to end off this episode with a little bit of a quiz, and there's going to be a different type of quiz, Jay. I'm going to take it from my guys over there at Parts Unknown. It's a wrestling channel, but they do something called Survival Series. And what they're going to do is is what I'm going to give you is a topic, and you have to name the guys in reverse chronological order. And you got 3 strikes, and let's see how far you can do, and let's see how far you can go.
Okay.
So for this topic, so in reverse chronological order, I'm going to need you to name NBA Finals MVPs. There's no limit here. Let's see how far you can go, but you have 3 strikes.
Man, NBA Finals MVP. So this is like going back from last year?
Starting last year, the 2023 Finals MVP.
Okay. Wow. First off, let me try to make sure I remember all the champs, and then we'll go. You said I have 3 strikes?
3 strikes.
Okay. All right. So obviously last year was Jokic.
Ding. There you go.
The year before, that was Golden State. So that was Steph finally.
Steph. Yep.
The year before that was the Bucks. So that was Giannis.
Yep.
2020 was the bubble. So that was Braun.
LeBron. Yep.
2019. Oh, duh. 2019 is Toronto. So that was Kawhi.
Yes, sir.
2018 and 2017 were the KD ones. Those were the quick ones.
Yep.
Yeah, those were the double bang bangs. 2016 is the 3-1 comeback. So that's LeBron.
Yep.
2015 is the one that's the most infamous of all of them. So that's Andre Iguodala.
Give me Iguodala.
Give me Iguodala. We'll go down in history, man.
Yeah.
What was before that? Oh my God. Who won the chip before that? What year am I on? 2014?
2014, yes.
That's San Antonio, I think. Is that Kawhi?
Ding.
Oh, let's go. 2013? I think that's a Miami. Is this Braun?
Ding.
Okay. We're kind of cooking right now, but it's like I'm starting to forget champions now. I'm in 2012?
Yes.
That's also Miami Heat, so that's got to be Braun.
Yes.
So 2011 was Dirk, because that's the one.
Yes, sir.
Now it gets nasty. Now it gets really gross. I'm going to be honest, because if I'm not mistaken, these next few I'm only going to remember because of like 2K. So I think 2010 and 2009 are both Lakers, which means they would both be Kobe's.
Correct and correct.
Which would mean that 08 is the Boston one. But who the hell is it? Is this KG?
And that is your first strike.
Damn it. That's Boston though, so that's got to be Paul Pierce then.
Ding.
Okay, cool. Because I know that's Boston.
Yes.
Where are we at now? We're at 2007. 2007, I think, is when the Spurs put foots on Cleveland the first time. So it's the Spurs, but who the hell is it? Is this Tim Duncan?
And that is your second strike.
Damn it. So then it's Tony.
It's Tony Parker, 07.
Wow. Okay, that's brutal. Okay, so where are we? So we're at 07. So that means we're at 06 now. Who the hell won the championship in 06? Oh, wow. That was going to be nasty. Okay, 06 is Miami year. And that is... Ooh, I can't sell. This is my last strike. This is Dwayne Wade.
This is when he was nicknamed the Flash. This is where
cool.
he got his nickname from.
We're cooking. 2005. Is this the second Spurs chip? 2005.
I will say you're cooking with grease right now.
Am I? That makes me feel a little bit better. I think this is one of the Spurs chips, and Tim Duncan has to have won one of these.
Tim Duncan, yes, he did.
Okay, so 2005, Tim Duncan. 2004 is Detroit Pistons. That's Chauncey.
That is Chauncey 04.
Because who else, honestly? Like Loki.
Honestly, yeah.
Wait, the Spurs won one in like 99, 2000. So I think 05 might have been their third chip. Which means that because 2003 they went to the finals too. Ooh. I think so. I said that really confidently, but I'm actually not entirely sure. I'm going to say Spurs 03 Timmy D again.
It is Tim Duncan again in 03.
Okay. Now it's going to get really bad because I'm not really sure. Is this a... Did the Lakers three-peat around here, I think? That would probably be like too assuming. I'm going to say this next year is Shaq.
Yep, it is Shaq.
I'm going to say the year before that is Shaq.
It is Shaq, yep.
Did they three-peat? This is so early that I know it's not Kobe if they did three-peat, but I'm just trying to trust myself to say whether or not they three-peat. I'm going to go with my gut and say it's Shaq again.
It is a three-peat of Shaq. You are correct.
Oh, thank God.
With one thing left, with one trick left, you're still keeping it alive.
Okay, where are we? 99?
Yep.
We're good, TV. Don't worry. Okay, so 99. Okay, wait. 99 was the first Spurs year. That was... Wait a minute. Do I trust him that much already? I feel like if I get this, I'm going to be good the rest of the way, TV. That's the part that's blowing me, bro. I'm going to say Tim Duncan won the 99.
It is Tim Duncan at 99.
Okay.
Well.
So then that means 98, 97, and 90. Yes. 98, 97, and 96 are all Jordan.
Yep.
95 and 94 are the Rockets years. They have to be Hakeem because who else?
Yes, sir.
Then the first three-peat happens. So that's 93, 92, and 91. That's Jordan.
All Jordan, yeah. The 90s is easy to clear. Once you get by to Tim Duncan.
Yeah, right. That's why I'm like, if I get them past that 99, I'm going to be cooking. Or maybe I'm not. Wait, 1990? Wait, this is Pistons time. I'm going to fumble this bad, though. Because I'm going to say this, and I know that one of them is going to... No, go with your gut. I'm going to say that 1990... Wait, 89 scares me because I don't know. I'm going to lose here. I'm telling the audience right now, I'm going to lose here because I'm saying this not as confidently. But I know the years before we get to this, there's like a Magic Johnson in 88 or something like that. But I'm going to say that in 1990 and 1989 that Isaiah Thomas won.
1990, Isaiah Thomas. 1989... And unfortunately, that is your third strike because in 1989, it was Mr. Joe Dumars who won the Finals MVP.
Damn it. Okay, just tell me the truth. Was 88 Johnson?
It wasn't. It was Big Game James in 88.
Damn, okay, so I would have got fried regardless. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Just needed to know.
I knew it was going to be tough from here. I mean, you got Magic in 87, Larry Bird in 86, Kareem in 85, Larry Bird. Then you have the 76er year, so that's Moses Malone. It's going to get harder here, but the fact you went all the way to the 80s, nice run, my guy. Very nice run.
Thank you, bro. Thank you.
Very, very nice. But yeah, another type of quiz. Jay gets his 3 strikes. I'm going to say that's like a good 30-pointer right there because that's like 30 years of stuff. But yeah, we might try to do this type of quiz as well in the future, but let us know down below what you guys want to see. If you want to see more of these type of quizzes or if you have any more ideas, let us know down below or shoot us a DM, whatever you guys like. But this is the end of today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. Jay, what do you tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
We're in the conference finals. What the heck?
Yeah.
How time flies when you're having fun. We are in the conference finals looking at a good 2 weeks before we end up figuring out who the big finals matchup is for the Larry O'Brien Trophy. TV, no matter who goes to the finals, somebody's winning their first chip. That's crazy to think about. That's insane.
Awesome. Honestly, this is awesome. This is great.
Yeah. Parity is officially back in the league. If we weren't sure before, we definitely are sure now. We're going to have a different champion for the 6th time in 6 years. Every champion prior didn't make it past the second round in this little trend we have as well, which goes to show you how the league is catching up to the teams that are doing the best every single year. And now we have a chance where we're going to see history made for some franchise. The Boston Celtics might hang another banner. Minnesota might do something they've never done before. The Dallas Mavericks might make it back to the chip for the first time in over a decade.
Yeah.
And then Indiana, same thing in terms of just making noise in the NBA Finals for the first time in a grip, right? Yeah. So, I mean, this is really uncharted waters we're in terms of watching the league, but I think that's a good thing because these are the different elements that make the league a much more exciting watch. And hey, it's been brought up a lot, but we're gonna have to kind of keep, banging the drum for this. The new era of the league is here. I mean, there's only 5. I saw an article the other day, or it was earlier today, that said there are only 5 players in the Eastern Conference and Western Conference finals combined above the age of 30. That's crazy.
Insane.
Crazy to think about. Those are the times we're in, man.
It's a true passing of the torch type of year in the NBA, and you love to see a bunch of new faces. It's going to be a damn dogfight to get into the finals, but you're going to be able to follow along with us on the Hit Your Free Throws podcast. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Remember to show love on our individual pages. Make sure to check out the YouTube, the Instagram, TikTok, and all that stuff. And of course, if you're listening on the podcast network, show us some love wherever you can. But yeah, another fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.